Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at how you can get a return value from a asynchronous task. And I've made a few changes to the application since last time, which I'll go through very quickly. In fact, let's take a look at the debug output here. So here's the, I'll clear this. Here is my phone running on the Android screencast application, and if I unlock it we'll see the application here. So now if I click OK on this dialog and then I press 4 points on the screen, it collects the 4 points and then saves them in a database, and then the next time this application starts it remembers that those 4 points are saved by using a preference, and if I hit the same ones again it will work out that I've hit the same set of points, and if I hit different ones then it will figure out that I've hit different ones. Except that I've just got a little bit more work to do here, which I'm going to do now, and I'll go briefly a little bit more through the application at the end of this tutorial, but let's get to the real subject here. So now the way the application is now, I'm using a async task object, an anonymous object here, to check the points. So there's my save points async task, but I've also got somewhere in here a oh yes, in fact that's the, yeah, this is the verify pass points async task. So I've got one to save my points, but I've also got one now to check my points. So it gets the points on the database and checks them to see if they're the same ones as the ones the user has just touched. Now what I want to do here is, what this task does is it gets a list of points from the database that have been saved, and it gets a list of points that have been touched, and it goes through and compares them, and the idea is that if they don't match we should somehow return false to the image activity, and if they do match we should return true. So kind of the question is, if you've got a doIn background method here like this, how can you return a value to the enclosing activity? Or in fact this could even be like some separate task in a different class or something. And something that I don't think I mentioned before, but it's very important actually, is that in doIn background you can't update the user interface. This is a background task thread. It's a separate thread to the thread that runs the user interface, and you can't update the user interface from it. And that's why async task has a bunch of other methods that you can override, including this on post execute that allows you to update the user interface. And there's also, well, let's just take a quick look here. So I'll right click and go to source, override implement methods, and probably we'll come back to this, but there's this on progress update, pre-execute, and on post execute that we've already implemented, and those methods do allow you to update the user interface from within them. Now my on post execute is dismissing the dialog that says checking password or something like that, and then what I want it to do is, here I want it to either probably do nothing and just stay on the screen if the user touches the wrong points, but if the user touches the right points I want on post execute to trigger another activity, and in this case it will actually go to my notes, which are protected by this kind of pass screen. And I want on post execute to do this depending on what has been figured out in the doIn background task, which gets the points from the database and checks them. So how can I communicate from the doIn background task to the on post execute task? And it's only in on post execute that I can update the user interface. I can't do it in doIn background. And the answer lies in the third of these template parameters of async task. Because you can, well actually let's just take a look at how this works. So I'm going to make doIn background return a boolean value to on post execute. but you can return any class here. So in what follows, I'm going to be talking about Boolean, but bear in mind that this could be any class at all, not just Boolean. It could be a string, integer, or some class that you've written yourself. So I'm going to change the third of these template parameters here to Boolean, and with a capital B, because we can't use a primitive value bool in a template parameter. And I need to change it here as well. And I need to change the return type of doing background to the same type again, so Boolean in this case. And finally, this parameter that onPostExecute takes, I need to change the type of that to Boolean also. And now in doing background, if the points don't match, I'm going to return false. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in just a minute. And if they do match, I'll return true. So I'm returning a Boolean value from doing background. And that is then received as the value of the parameter to onPostExecute. So it's very simple. And finally, I'm going to display that value here. Let's just have a look at that. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll uninstall this application. So I'm just going to go to my app screen here, and let's find Note Squirrel. And I'll show you what I'm doing. That will help. So I'll find Note Squirrel in Apps here, and there it is, and hold my finger down on it, and just go to uninstall here, and I'll uninstall it. So yes, I want to get rid of it. And if you feel you've understood what I just said and you want to stop looking at the tutorial at this point because you want to get on and use async tasks, feel free. But what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to show you the application working, and I'm just going to go a little bit through what I've done already. And in the stuff that I've implemented since the last tutorial, there are no new Android concepts other than what I just showed you, other than getting a return value from doing background in an async task. So for that reason, I thought if it interests you, and if you've been typing out this code as we go along, then you could figure this out yourself, and it will be really good practice. But if not, you might want to just do your own thing, look at the tutorial and do your own thing, but it's up to you, of course. So let's just run this application now on my phone, and I'll minimize this editor here so we can see what's happening in the console. And if you find your console's blank, check in the console list here on the left here above on the right here above the console, because you probably just have to go to the other console. So go to my Android console, and we can see here it's installing. And we've got success. So let's take a look. My phone is just beginning to show the application, and here we go. Here it is. So actually, I uninstalled it, I should say, because I wanted to get rid of the SQL database that I had before, and I wanted to start again from scratch. So I'll click I'll go to DDMS here, and I'll get rid of the dialog here. Click OK, and I'll touch 4 points. So I'm actually touching here the top of the cathedral, and the tops of the 2 lower towers, and the top of the tower in the middle, and it says storing them. And now if I touch, let's clear the output here. If I touch the same points again, it now says pass true down here. But if I touch different points, it says pass false. So it's verifying that I touched the same points again. And as I say, I'll leave it to a challenge for you to implement if you want to, and if you don't, then that's also good. But what I've done is, so in my async task here, in my async task that checks the points, I get the points from the database using the code I wrote previously, and I check that both the points collected by the point collector class and the save points from the database both have they're both lists of the same size, 4 points, and I go through each of the points, getting the save point and the touch point in order. I compute the difference between the x and y values, and then I square them and add them together, and this is just Pythagoras' theorem. So I'm computing the square of the distance between them, and then I compare the square of the distance to the square of this point closeness value. So point closeness is the maximum distance apart that 2 points can have in pixels before I consider them to be different points. And if any point is further away, if any touch point is further away from the corresponding save point than point closeness, I return false, and if it passes all these checks, I return true, and then we get that return value down here in on-post execute. And finally here we'll be able to go to a different activity in a future tutorial. So that's basically it. And one last thing to mention is that previously in my point collector, when I had collected 4 points here, I then called point collected on the listener, which is actually the image activity that's listening here. And then I called points.clear, so I cleared the list of points here. And I had to change that so that I'm clearing the list of points. I gave point collector a clear method, and I'm now clearing it in on post execute in image activity. And the reason for that is that what's happening is point collector here executes points collected in my listener, and points collected in my listener then will execute verify pass points, and that is this code here. But verify pass points now runs an asynchronous task. So verify pass points will return basically immediately or very, very quickly, and the asynchronous task will carry on running after it has returned, which is what asynchronous tasks do. They carry on running in the background. So what will happen is, before, what was happening is this would then run immediately, clear the list of points, and then the asynchronous task would then find that there weren't any saved points in the point collector. So I have to make sure that things go in the right order. I have to use the set of points in the asynchronous task, and only after that is use the points can I clear the list of points in the point collector. And that's okay because nothing else is happening in my application while the points are being verified. There's like a dialog and stopping the user from doing anything else. But if I did want the user to be able to do other stuff while the asynchronous task was running, then I'd need to think about returning a copy of the collected points from point collector, which is also something you can do. Okay, but that's it for this tutorial, and we will probably come back to asynchronous tasks in the future, but for now I thought I'd introduce the topic slowly because otherwise it looks a bit ferocious. So join me again next time, and until next time, happy coding.